morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, the big issue on the social media has been the Auditor General's report, where she is giving details of the level of looting in the various government departments. Benjamin, what I find amazing here, besides the looting, is that so many Zimbabweans read these stories and just laugh. I find that really disconcerting. What is there to laugh at? Am I missing the joke here?
It's good day to everybody. It's pretty sad, when an abnormal situation becomes normal. It's either one is turning a blind eye to it, or like you said, they're finding humor, you know, in what is happening. Yet they are, it is actually they pay taxes. In other words, it's your money. I mean, what I'll give you a classic example. When Wicknell Chivayo was going about giving, people cars, everybody was so happy. He's doing, philanthropy. He's giving away cars. God bless him. And in my mind, I'm like, how foolish can we get? Surely, if we have got to this point where we know what Wignall is all about, we know what he has done, how then do we support him in what he's doing? How then do we call it philanthropy when it's stolen from each and every one of us? I must agree with you. It's sad to me. It's heartbreaking because if we cannot value our self-worth, we are being sold short at every corner. Zimbabweans, I would love to believe we are being sold short at every turn. But we find humor on social media. We follow them, we laugh about it, we tag friends. Life as usual. It's not normal what is happening. I'm lost for words. I'm really lost for words.
The origin of corruption in Zimbabwe can be traced way back to 1980. But I just wanted to play a short clip of Tony Blair trying to explain why Singapore was a success.
The fascinating thing about Lee Kuan Yew is he took 3 important decisions right at the beginning for Singapore. Each one of them now seems obvious. Each one at the time was deeply contested. Number 1, he said, everyone's going to speak English in Singapore. Now, there were lots of people who said to him at the time, no, we need to have our own local language. We need to be true to our roots and everything. He said, no, English is the language of the world and we're all going to speak English. Secondly, he said, we're going to get the best intellectual capital from wherever it exists in the world and we're going to bring it to Singapore. And again, people said, no, we should stand on our own 2 feet. And you're also bringing in the British, who who we've got all these disputes with. And he said, no, I'm going to bring in the best from wherever they are, and they're going to come to Singapore. And the third thing he did was he said there's going to be no corruption. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to make sure our political leaders are well paid, which the Singapore leaders are the best paid in the world. And there's going to be zero tolerance of corruption. Those are the 3 decisions that were instrumental in building Singapore today.
I think Tony Blair is right there. Except that in Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe took it the other way around. He decided that in Zimbabwe, corruption would be at the fore. He is going to corrupt everybody to serve his singular goal of staying in power at all costs. So while in Singapore, they were paying people so that they could stamp out corruption. In Zimbabwe, Mugabe was well paying those around him so that they would sing his tune, corrupt them. Here is a short clip of a video where Dr. Simba Makone was explaining what happened in Zimbabwe soon after independence, how Robert Mugabe started corrupting his ministers.
I recall very clearly that when we came into office in 1980, we inherited Ian Smith's systems. And Ian Smith's ministers drove Peugeot 504s. They drove themselves from home to work in their Land Rovers and all in kinds. Most of them were farmers. They parked their Land Rover and then they used the government vehicle when they were at work with a chauffeur. When they finished at night, they packed them and they took theirs to go home. Within the month of our coming into office, Prime Minister Mugabe then directed that every minister be issued with an E-class Mercedes-Benz. And the Peugeot 504s were retired to permanent secretaries, and the deputy ministers then took over. We can also look at many other things, small they may appear at the time. Let me hazard that even at that point, Enos Nkala was our Minister of Finance. I don't think we knew what budget we inherited from Ian Smith when the decision was taken to buy those E-class fleets for the ministers. So the material affection for material things has always been with us. And the differentiation also, even going back into the camps, Zemashefu, Neze, my comrades, Makada, were not the same. So much so that even...
I think the most important thing in that clip is that Mugabe started pampering his ministers. And it is a historic fact that once he had bought them, they were helpless. They were not able to stand up even if they saw something that was going wrong. The most infamous event was, of course, the Kukura Wound of 1983 to 1987. None of his cabinet ministers, members of parliament, dared to stand up and say, what is going on here? Because they each had been bought off. And corruption was to become rampant. In 2012, for instance, Tendai BT was the Minister of Finance. And he reported that Mugabe was having these trips to the Far East to have his eyesight checked. And the cost of each trip was $3 million US. And if you have 8 of them, that's 24 million US dollars. But none of them complained. Even the MDC ministers did not complain about it because they all had the E-Class Mercedes-Benz. And it has now come to this. Corruption in Zimbabwe has now become rampant. It's simply unbelievable. Where are we going, Benjamin?
We're going nowhere. We're going nowhere fast. I believe since 1980, Zimbabwe has never taken off. You know, we are still under colonialism, our own. That our minds are colonized. We are colonized by our fellow men, our fellow brothers and sisters. You know, corruption right now has gone to unprecedented levels. It's, you know, at least at some point during Mugabe, he himself, he acknowledged to say, you know, there's money that is missing, but I don't know how it happens. But with Mnangagwa's rule, he is fingered or he is somewhere involved in these scandals. You know, he is right in the heart of it. You know, such that, you know, and when you deal with youngsters that are thugs, that, you know, are ruthless, they implicate you directly or indirectly. You know, look, you know, the gold mafia, you know, documentary. The youngsters pointed him out to say, you know, if you want to see the main man, number one, the president, he sold him out. Look at Chivayo. He's the one that came up with this, you know, recent saying, "Takashibata kuti G." You know, these are youngsters making fun out of you because there is no way you can control them now because they know your dealings. You know, you can do nothing to me because I'm paying, you know, my taxes to Caesar. You know, I'm giving Mnangagwa his cut of the deal, so everything is okay. You know, don't move the waters, don't shake anything. You know, this is the level of corruption that is there. Now there are those that are disgruntled, that are not eating from where these guys are playing. They are making their own ways. This is why you find since 2014, ZEC has arrested nobody, but with clear-cut evidence. Sometimes, you know, I'll give you an example. Tombo had 10 million, you know, in his house. 10 million in cash. And Zimbabwe had no money, but this guy had money, you know. And I would believe that was the only one that they found. He had many hidden in other spots, you know. That's how things operate. He never puts his money in one, you know, in one place. 10 million. They took it away and they deposited it for him in a bank, you know. And, you know, go, you're okay, you know. Don't keep large sums of money so that people will know and then also implicate us. I believe that is what, you know, the resolution was. It's you hear of a scandal every single day. And unfortunately, like you said, you know, our main discussion is what are we doing about it? Why are we finding humor in this? You know, insurance say, anyway, those Rigitica. I mean, you are not seeing it for the first time. You know, we really need to take things seriously. You know, it is, you know, Zimbabwe belongs to each and every one of us. It's sad at the same time. You know, you kind of worry to say, what kind of people do we have? The leaders, the citizens, where are we? What are we doing? It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. And like you correctly said, most of that money is being sorted out away out of the country. While the nation starved, we sold that money away. I referred to Mugabe earlier on and how he started corruption. He himself became incredibly corrupt. I mentioned the 3 million trip, 8 of them he made in 2012 to have an eye check. 24 million, and the ministers, including the MDC ministers who were there, and Tedai Biti was the Minister of Finance, said nothing because they had been bribed too. Mugabe went on to build his blue roof mansion, which many people believe costed between 3 to 4 billion US dollars. And no one has ever said anything. This is what it means. That is what corruption is all about. And most of the money, like you correctly say as well, Benjamin, there is salted away out of the country. Here is somebody who is talking to that very point.
Africa's politics have fallen into the hands of elites, as these people just do what the colonialists did, which was suck the wealth out and shift it overseas. World Bank says between 60 and 70% of Africa's capital shifted out of the continent. It's in banks in Europe. So there's this mentality which I think has allowed a very small group of people to take over those countries politically, but also economically. And until that changes, that is, until there's a new generation or even a revolution that actually takes power back to African people, I think those problems, that lack of development, will continue.
I think he is right there, Benjamin.
Yes, I mean, this is what we are experiencing, especially, you know, moving money these days has become very easy, especially in countries, these Middle Eastern countries, you know, the Dubais. They don't ask for much, you know, paper trail and paperwork, you know, as long as it's money and it's not fake. You can wire it, you can move it even in bags. It's okay, you know. But if you were to go to some places, you know, like Western countries, they would want to know where exactly, you know, the money came from. Is it not from drug dealings and stuff like that? You know, so you find out that most of Zimbabwe's wealth. I mean, the gold mafia documentary was the best evidence to show you how money laundering takes place. You know, and the Zimbabwean, you know, ambassador actually, you know, explained it very well because he did not know he was being documented. How he would wash it for them and have it, you know, cleaned, as they say. That's the level of corruption that we are at. You know, it's very, very sad that a lot of minerals, things that could have generated. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. Zimbabwe is a case where if there is a drought, they will open a GoFundMe account. Please donate. You know, Mnangagwa was, you know, on air talking about the zeros, where he was saying Ubara zero and all that day because he had gotten $1 million. And, you know, he cannot buy food for his struggling people, but he can for surely go and buy 100 top of the range cars the very next morning, you know, to give bribes so that at least everybody within his circle keeps quiet about what is happening. You know, they don't become whistleblowers. You know, so you find their mentality, since corruption is like that. You always have to be appeasing the other so that it doesn't sell you out. So you're always on the lookout, you're always worried, you're always paying somebody so that they keep quiet. Just like you were saying, the MDC guys were there. They were all there, but they said nothing. Mugabe used to charter, planes, very expensive planes, and he would just go with his few connections, and stay with the plane until he gets sorted out and come back with it. So yeah, it's believable. 24 million can easily be spent when you charter a plane, right? And they have bush allowance in a plane. How do you have that's 5-star? You're not even traveling business class. The plane belongs to you at that particular moment. So it's really getting out of hand, especially now. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And the sad part is we are enjoying it. We're enjoying reading the stories. We talk about it on social media. We tag each other and we throw stories, funny sides, laughing. And the joke is on us. The joke, when you brought out that cartoon there, people will be laughing at different images. No, the joke is on us.
Yeah, and we have the visionary leader. I just wanted to address Henry Hunter's point there of Mugabe's blue roof costing 3 to 4 billion US dollars. I think when the money is not yours, it is easy. That blue roof, when it was being built, Mugabe distanced himself from it. It was built, and the title deeds were in the name of the party. He knew, of course, that the party would give it to him to live in. And so when he was booted out of office, that was his number one priority, to get the title deeds to that house. And they were transferred to his name. But while he was building it, he didn't want to be involved or appear to be involved, because in case he was asked to account for it, he was going to turn around and say, no, it's not mine. It belongs to the party. The kind of waste when the money is not yours and there's more where that came from is unbelievable. It's simply unbelievable. When his daughter got married, there were stories of how she changed the curtains in that mansion because the wedding reception was at the house, Kushungu house, the blue roof. And one can imagine the cost of those curtains. The full length curtain. But when the money is not yours, you don't care. So the mansion costing 4 billion is nothing. Absolutely nothing. These people, Mugabe, bribed his ministers with these E-class limousines, and then they're on the generous salaries. Some of them have got mansions of their own, But the point is, having bribed these ministers, they now could not ask him, where are you getting the money to build all these mansions? He was free to loot himself. And of course, once he was looting, they also followed suit. He couldn't tell them to stop looting because they'll turn around and say, wait a minute, what about you? And so we ended up with this crazy situation where everybody now is looting. The tragedy for Zimbabwe is Zimbabweans themselves think it's a joke. Yes, some people have said, well, I laugh because if I don't cry, maybe you should cry. Because this is a tragic situation. No country can possibly prosper with this level of looting. None.
You know, just to
Sorry, let me just finish that point. Even those who want to help Zimbabwe are finding it increasingly difficult. Even, for instance, right now there's a drought. They're finding it very difficult to help the country. When you look at the level of looting that is taking place, the kind of posh cars the ministers and so forth are driving. And Zimbabweans themselves, we are sitting there twiddling our thumbs. Donors are finding it difficult.
I just wanted to add, you know, maybe to explain to Henry how 4 billion would easily come about. You know, you and I believe when you're building a house, you're looking for shelter. That is your main goal. You know, these guys, they're looking to show off. I mean, I'll give you an example, you know, of Xavier Kasukuwere. His house is bulletproof. How much do you think it costs? Right? And now, when you're talking of a house, we're not talking of just the 4 walls, right? These guys are not going to go and get a simple bulb. They want, you know, prestige. They want, you know, the Gucci's. You know, where the tap that you open, water is not your ordinary, you know, tap. They want, you know, the expensive Italian made. So you find all the gadgets that are inside the house. If a Rolex watch can cost you in the region of, you know, plus 10,000, let's put to fill up a whole house with curtains, you know, designer curtains, not your curtains so that you and I cannot be seeing our business. Designer, to show whoever is coming, you know, that we are set. So you will find, because it's not his money, he's not working for it, he's just going to go and get. He can allow himself to splash it however he chooses. So it's if you were to ask me, it's very, very simple for somebody to spend that amount of money on just a simple house. Anyway, there's also a YouTube. You can go on YouTube, just, you know, type in Zimbabwe's most expensive houses. They will show you the regions of those houses, that, you know, roughly how much they cost. You know, so that would help explain. Sorry, now you can go ahead.
Well, the other aspect aspect of it is, of course, those people who were involved in building that house would have known that Mugabe and his wife would be looking at the price tag to help them decide. A low price tag to them means the thing must be cheap. So you inflate the price. Curtains that should cost maybe even $1,000. You put the price at 10,000 and they'll go for it. You tell them, oh, these are the best designers. You know, this is a design curtain, specially designed for your house and so forth. And they'll pay for it. Everything is super, super inflated. Yes, if you were to go back to the house now, you may find it's not even worth a quarter of the price that they paid. Because when you go there, you look at the thing and you can say what the price is. The other day, we were talking of a server, which if you go on the internet, you could buy for 500. Is it 5,000 US dollars? And yet, Zach paid 1.2 million US dollars for it. They know these are people who have got a lot of money. Money is not the problem to them. Indeed, they look at the price tag to help them make their decision. They think if it is very expensive, it must be good. And these people exploit it. They're going to travel to Zimbabwe to come and measure the curtain, the drop of the curtain. And that expense is added on to the price. Why anyone could not have measured beggars belief, but that is what we are talking about here. I think the other point that I wanted to talk about here is that the opposition have also fallen for it. The opposition in Zimbabwe has become part and parcel of ZANU-PF. In the cartoon there, we're showing Mnangagwa with a bag of US 40,000. This was produced in 2022 when Mnangagwa paid all the MPs and senators 40,000 US dollars housing allowance. Of course, they accepted it. But having accepted it, the next thing we heard was that Mnangagwa had paid his deputy ministers 230,000 US dollars housing allowance. And these ministers, $500,000 US dollars housing allowance. Of course, if the MPs and senators had not been paid their 40,000, they would have complained about it. So he bribed them ahead of time. And after that, they could never complain. Mnangagwa went on as part of his 2023 election campaign to bribe and spend money as if there's no tomorrow. It is widely believed that Mnangagwa must have spent at least 5,000 US dollars in the 2023 elections. From buying chicken and chips for Povo, where Frog marched to his rallies, to twin cab vehicles, the chiefs, judges were paid a staggering $400,000 each. God knows how many judges we have got in Zimbabwe now, but each one of them got their cut. Church leaders and so forth, they were all being bribed with cars and farms and God knows what else. And in most of these purchases, of course, you always have the dealers who will be asking for an inflated price for their own cut as well, who will be bringing in cars more than the allocated ones and use their license to bring in those cars without paying duty they got from Mnangagwa, to bring in additional cars. They don't pay duty for it, and then yet they sell them. So the level of corruption in Zimbabwe has reached new levels, nauseating levels. And like I said, the tragedy for me is that we have got a people here who are in the habit of laughing about it. And I think we should be crying. Benjamin, go ahead and give your closing remarks.
Okay. So, it's just evident to show that, the level of corruption, has just reached, I think, I hope it's the peak, because if they continue, I believe there will be nothing left in Zimbabwe. I mean, if just to add to say, the monies that were given to the MPs, and the ministers was just, 2 weeks before they all were going to lose their jobs, because parliament and all structures were going to be, dissolved. And those were said to be loans. I don't know who loans somebody that is jobless. It's weird. And just after that day, now they've, been elected again, they get, the same cut again. So whatever they got paid at the end, they also paid again at the beginning. So you are right. I mean, Mnangagwa must have spent at least 5 billion just on the campaign trail alone, and he's still spending right now because he's giving everybody. Recently, they gave away some more cars to the commissioners who are working on the Harare case. They gave new judges new cars. I suppose their houses are in place as well. So it's getting messy and messy every day. And we are now lucky that we have internet, and we have researchers, we have journalists that are bringing us this information to open our eyes to the level of corruption that is happening in Zimbabwe. And this is a warning to say, if we let this continue to be, we are going to lose the whole entire country, whatever minerals that are there. For me personally, I honestly believe Zimbabwe has got no more, no more diamonds. Those are finished. They were just in Chiadzwa, and the amount of digging that is there, and nobody's talking about them anymore, which means there's nothing, even in the Reserve Bank. They could have simply just said, we have so much gold and we have so much diamond. They never spoke of the diamond, which means there is nothing. They have looted everything. And before we know it, they would have sold everything to the Chinese and got given the money, and we are left with nothing. And our children will be left with nothing. So really, it's not something that is funny. We shouldn't find humor in this. We shouldn't find humor in Wicknell not delivering on electricity and going to sit home in the dark. Who does that, right? We are being shortchanged, and we are finding humor to say, he gave so and so a car, so and so begged, and we're laughing about it. It's not his money, it's ill-gotten money, money from us taxpayers. So unless you are laughing at yourself and finding humor at people laughing at you or scorning you, then so be it. But if we are people that have got the sense and the pride that we should have as Zimbabweans, we should be asking for accountability from both political divides. The MDC or Triple C or Chamisa's members of parliament, they are also in there. They were also part and parcel of the looting. They took the 40 million, the $40,000, loans. They did not leave them behind to say, we've got people that are struggling. No, they took. So it's all about money for these people. This is why we say, in the end, it all comes down to how you choose your leaders. If we are going to continue choosing the Mugabes, we are going to have a problem continuously, because once they get into power, they will also want that same blue roof. Remember, there was Mpoko. Mpoko did not want to stay in his house anymore. He wanted to stay the life in a hotel. You see, so this is exactly what our leaders would do. The ones that we are saying are coming. If we do not choose wisely, they will do exactly the same. So I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom, but I'm trying to give words of wisdom, so that at least when we are choosing our leaders, we must look for competent individuals, trustworthy from the very beginning, and then we could move on as a country. Thank you.
Well, I think there are still diamonds in Zimbabwe, and I still think there's a lot of gold in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has the great fortune of having a lot of mineral wealth and so forth. But these are supposed to be for the benefit of the country, to make Zimbabwe a prosperous nation. And here we are, they've become now a curse, because those resources now are being cornered. And like I said, Mnangagwa must have spent at least $5 billion last year in the elections last year. This is money creamed off from some of all this looting that's taking place to help Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF stay in power. That is one of the problems. And they're now so rich that it is becoming more and more difficult to remove them from office. Their hunger and appetite for looting has not diminished. It has grown in leaps and bounds. I think we need to wake up to that reality in Zimbabwe. We need to understand what's going on here, and to dismiss it with the kind of indifference that we have often seen from some people is being naive, because the problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get even bigger. Particularly now, like we pointed out, they've now corrupted the opposition itself. Getting those competent leaders that Benjamin was referring to there is not going to be easy. because the regime has got money. And some of these people, particularly those who are poor themselves, they will not turn their nose to a bribe. The challenge of ending this ZANU-PF dictatorship is not going to be easy. It's not going to be a walk in the park. But nonetheless, it's one that we must face. Thank you very much, Benjamin, and everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Good night.